Hello and welcome to the Ruth MacFit podcast, where we chat all things health, fitness, nutrition, and how to build habits that actually work with your life. Now, if you're enjoying these episodes, then it really helps if you like and you subscribe. And I absolutely love hearing from you. So please do leave a comment, maybe a 5-star review, and let me know what has resonated with you. Right, let's get into today's episode. Hello, welcome. Very happy to be here chatting to you as always. Now, we're going to do a slightly different format this week than normal weeks because I'm going to be covering a few different topics. I've been thinking about things that have come up in questions from members of the public, from the community, and also thoughts in my own head that I would love to cover, but maybe don't need an episode on their own. So that's my plan for today. And I want to chat to you about things that hopefully most of you will be able to resonate with and be able to reflect a little on what does and doesn't work for you. Maybe find some answers and apply it to your own life. I want to chat to you about calories, motivation, energy, mood, especially at this time of year, being that it is January. And I do want to start with the calorie topic. Those of you that have followed me for a while may well know that I use calorie ranges with my members. So in the no crap cake method, women are given a calorie range. And the idea with this range is that the lower number is going to be a decent deficit and the upper number is going to be closer to maintenance. Or as with my latest calorie calculator, it's going to be your expected maintenance. Now, this varies depending on height, weight, activity levels, and age. So there are different things that come into this. And as I briefly just mentioned, I have created this calorie range calculator. Anyone can go along and fill it in. I'll put the link in the show notes if you do want to do this. And the aim with this range is that there will be days where you're feeling great and you can go for the lower end, and that's fine. That's brilliant. Do that. But there will be days where time and energy feels a little bit off and you might want to have a little bit more. You might even decide to eat at maintenance. Over the week, as an average, if you're hitting the middle of that range, you're doing really well. You're still going to be in a deficit. You're still going to be making progress, and without that all or nothing mindset. Often women can aim for very, very low numbers. They're aiming for sometimes under that lower end of the range. And then this can result in them not being able to sustain it because undereating normally always leads to overeating. Even if it's not that day or the next day, it normally catches up with us. And we don't want that because we are fed up of being either on or off a diet at this stage of life. But something that's actually come about as a result of me doing this calorie range calculator is that a lot of women who probably don't follow me and haven't followed me for a while are surprised that the lower end of their range is as high as it is. And I'm saying high. This is definitely not a high number. This is what I would call the lower end of the deficit. And if you're hitting the middle, you're okay. And I was thinking about some of the numbers that women have shared with me and how they are even lower often than their BMR. Now, BMR is basal metabolic rate. This is the energy required at rest if you're doing nothing. And here we're talking breathing, circulation, your temperature regulation, and then your organs. And BMR is not a fat loss target. It's that baseline for survival. You definitely want to be having more than this. And sometimes I think that women see their BMR if it's presented on something and they're like, right, that's what I need to aim for. But this is not going to be sustainable. And research constantly shows that when we have that chronic low energy availability, we have an increase in fatigue, in hunger, in our stress hormones, and metabolic adaptation. It can also reduce our training performance and increase the risk of muscle loss, which we definitely don't want at this stage of life. And of course, as I mentioned, undereating tends to lead to overeating as well. And so if you are looking at your deficit for your calories and you're thinking that seems a bit too high, that seems a bit easy, ask yourself if you have been able to be consistent regularly on the number that you've been aiming for. It might be that you have lost weight by aiming for a low number, but you probably have seen fluctuations in that eating. It's just over time you've still been in a deficit, but that can feel pretty miserable, always aiming for like 1,200 calories, for example, and then having these times where you can't manage it and you're feeling guilty and then going back and aiming for it again. Ideally, you're going to look for fluctuations through the week, but just not big extreme ones. And obviously there's way more than calories themselves. And I am going to do an episode soon on our nutrition in general, because it does make a difference what we eat. Aiming for 3 meals a day with plenty of protein and fiber is a go-to method for me, because of the fact that we feel more satiated, that we're less likely to snack on those things in a reactive sort of way, and we're able to make those choices around the other food that we're eating. But we can cover that on another podcast episode. Now, you wouldn't believe the amount of women I'm talking to at the moment who are finding January a little tricky. And by that, I mean they're like either ill, feeling a bit fed up, just in general feeling like things are a little bit harder, the darker evenings, the probably tighter financial situation because of when they got paid in December. And there can be less exciting things to look forward to. I know that I would always go and visit my friend in Canada in February. I was lucky enough that her husband works for an airline and I'd fly over buddy pass. And I did it in February for a reason, because I felt like I needed that little lift to get me through the winter. And I go and see her. Yes, it was cold, but it was bright sunshine and it would feel so lovely. And I guess that's why people are looking forward to and booking summer holidays at the moment, because these can feel like quite long months without Christmas on the horizon or those other things that are coming up. But we are heading into the end of January now. We're going to be in February very, very soon. And then I think that we start feeling like spring is approaching. But I think the danger with this fluctuation in mood is that we can easily feel like we're failing. We do start January feeling really positive, ready to go, and then just slogging on through and feeling like we're not doing enough. But feeling a little bit flat is not a sign that you're failing in any way. And there are things that we can continue to do with the knowledge that what we do in the summer and our routine in the summer, it's okay if that looks different from the winter. I think that's fairly normal. You'll notice that you will eat differently in the winter than the summer. I don't know when it changes, but I crave salad in the summer. If you gave me a bowl of salad now, I'd be like, really? I want warm, comforting food at the moment. And we adapt and we change depending on where we are in the year and where we are in life. And one thing we've been really focusing on inside the No Crap Cake method, we started focusing on this more as a January challenge. And I call it a challenge. It was meant to make life easier. So it's not really a challenge as such. But we focused on ripple effect habits, things that take minimal effort, but give you a big reward at the end. They have the biggest impact. And we went with 5 minutes of movement in the morning. You could do more if you wanted to, and doing one thing each evening to make tomorrow easier. And the morning movement in particular has had such great feedback from members about lifting their mood and making them feel better for the rest of the day. I think that that can really work well at this time of year, even if it is dark outside and it's not ideal. If you can do one thing to just get moving, whether it's putting on some music, dancing to your favorite song and getting yourself in that kind of increased mood, that's fine. A 5-minute PJ workout. I've been going live with members every morning, Monday to Friday, to just do a little bit of a routine, normally 3 exercises. We do them 3 times through, less than 10 minutes, normally about 7 minutes, and it's done. And they often will then go on and do other things because they're feeling so good. So morning movement is great. But then also to make things easier, because I think we can just get into this routine of not feeling particularly in a routine, is that doing one thing each evening to make tomorrow easier gives you the opportunity to set some intentions for the day, thinking about how you want to feel. I know that if I start getting any bubbling anxiety, feeling like I've forgotten something, it's normally because I haven't taken time to think about what's coming up or what I want things to look like. So it can really help just to do one thing each evening to make tomorrow easier, to help you be able to get up and do 5 minutes of morning movement to get moving. But I think we do sometimes underestimate the power of something small. And I was actually chatting to a member last week who was saying that the difficult time of the month was coming up with her cycle. There's a time of the month that feels a bit harder. And she was like, I know it's coming. And I don't want to say to myself it's going to be bad, because maybe that's what's making it feel harder. But I said, oh, interestingly, you always feel good when you're moving. Let's have a look and see what your movement's like. And I swear we could track her cycle based on her movement. We went through her steps for the last 4 or 5 months. And the day that she was due they plummeted. And that was actually an encouraging thing for her. It wasn't, oh, that's how bad it is. She was like, well, that's fine. I'm just going to aim, if nothing else, to just keep my steps a little bit higher, not super high, just a little bit higher. So she's making movement because we know that movement makes her feel good. So if you're feeling like that, it is worth going and looking at patterns as well. But it is no wonder that we're feeling a bit like flat this time of year, because that reduced daylight can affect our serotonin and our melatonin regulation, which can then have an impact on our mood, our energy, and our sleep quality. And I, for one, have been struggling a bit with sleep at the moment, which feels weird because it's not something I normally struggle with. I'm going to bed early. I'm finding myself taking a bit longer to drift off to sleep and waking a few times in the night, which is not like me at all. Anyway, if nothing else, focus on a little bit of movement though, because we can increase those endorphins and the dopamine. Let's get those feel-good hormones coming in. The other thing that I think can happen at this time of year is that it can feel quite serious. There's less fun happening and it can then start to feel a little bit heavy. And one thing I was thinking just earlier today is how it can be really powerful as well, noticing those small little things that kind of bring you a little bit of joy. I was in my kitchen earlier and we've got these little bird feeders, suction things stuck to the window, and there was a starling on there and it was really going for it. We get robins and we get finches and we had a starling today. I'm realizing this is making me sound very, very cool. But regardless, I watched it and I couldn't help but be a little bit happier and a little bit smilier. And we can not really properly take time to register those beautiful, lovely things around us. And I think sometimes we can underestimate how much our nervous system needs little moments like that in the day, and making sure we're taking time to notice these things too. It just pulls us out of our head just for a moment. Instead of being absorbed with all the things that we're not doing and so on, we get taken into this other moment, this bigger, I guess it's like awe. People say to go for awe walks, to look up and around as you're heading out walking, but even just noticing those small things could be a bit like gratitude as well, noticing those things that you're grateful for, but just little moments of loveliness. And that could include your dog being a complete doofus. That's a regular occurrence at my house, but making sure that I'm taking time to enjoy that. A song that you can put on that just makes you feel good. Mr. Blue Sky in the morning. My son was in a really flat mood going to school this morning. It's parents' evening today, and I wonder whether he's a little bit nervous about it. I'll let you know. But I put on Mr. Blue Sky thinking, surely that is going to bring a smile to his face. It didn't actually work, but I think that could be because I started singing. Anyway, regardless. But these moments aren't going to fix everything, but they can sometimes feel like they're taking the edge off what can feel like a harder moment in time. And that can be what we need. I have spoken about this next topic on other podcasts because something that will come up again and again is, why am I struggling when nothing is really wrong? But everything goes into that same pot. So you have lots of little things chipping away at your brain, your cognitive load, and you can feel overwhelmed with nothing really that you can pin down as to what it is. It's just there can be lots of different things. We think of stress as being this one big event. More often, it's lots of little low-level concerns that we're dealing with, which is so common at this stage of life. And I was thinking about this with relation to myself. I had just come off a call with the local authority because my son's EHCP needs to be reviewed because he is doing his GCSEs this year and then will be going on to college, hopefully in September. And there's going to be parents that are dealing with things that are happening with their children, like myself. There's going to be those children that you're concerned about, might even be husbands, partners that you're concerned about. But these little things that you're not deeply worried, they're not affecting you every moment of the day, but they're just little thoughts that just come in every now and then. And it's those sorts of things that stay on your mind and can impact how your nervous system is feeling overall. And actually, I don't know if anyone, well, I do know that other people out there are going to have children on the autistic spectrum or that are neurodivergent or anything else. And I think sometimes we underestimate as parents how much we have to think about things slightly differently for them. And I was thinking about this a bit more, particularly at the moment, because he is going off to do his GCSEs. And I don't often talk in detail about my eldest on here because he's quite a private person. And it feels like, I don't know, that I'm talking about him without his consent. But I think this is important because other people might feel the same, but you can be worried about them. And there can be lots of things that you don't even realize, but you are adapting life a little bit for them. And as I was dropping him at school yesterday, I saw him shuffling off, running off to make sure he was going to be where he needed to be on time. And then I saw, I guess, I'm assuming neurotypical children, who knows, but these children walking along without a care in the world, chatting to their friends. And I briefly thought, oh, I wish for him that life was just like easier like that. And I thought, oh, that's a funny thought, because I see autism very much as a personality trait, right? It's their personality. They're different. And when we're younger, it can be hard to be different. But when you grow up, it's those differences that make you stand out. But I briefly found myself thinking that. And it then reminded me of a poem that is out there. It's copyrighted, so I don't think I can read it all here, but it's beautifully written. It's about parenting a child with a disability, but I think it could actually be applied to any unexpected change in life. And it talks about how when you're expecting a baby, you kind of have these plans. It's a bit like planning for a vacation. It talks about how you could be planning to go to Italy. You're so excited about going to Italy and seeing the Colosseum and the gondolas and all of these amazing things. You buy a guidebook, you learn some phrases, and then you get on the plane. And when you land, they say, "Welcome to Holland." And you think, I didn't want to go to Holland. I wanted to go to Italy. But you're in Holland, and Holland isn't such a bad place. And actually, as you take a breath and you think about it, you look around and you notice that Holland actually has windmills and it has tulips. And actually, Holland is pretty nice. But then you find yourself seeing people in your everyday life that are coming and going from Italy, and they're telling you how brilliant Italy is. They're telling you how wonderful it is and what a good time they're having there. And you'll think to yourself sometimes, yeah, I was going to go to Italy, but I went to Holland. And then what the poem goes on to say is that if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't go to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy all the very special things that Holland has to offer. And as I was thinking about this, because I think I do get to enjoy the amazing things, and my boys are high functioning, they're doing great, it's fine. I thought, my boys don't miss Italy at all, because they only know Holland. And any time that I'm thinking, oh, I wish that that was easier for them, I realize that this is who they are and this is how they want things to be. And probably my want of it being easy is coming from the fact that I would have wanted to fit in and do things certain ways, and that I would have been bothered by it, but they're not. So I thought I'd share that reflection with you, because I'm sure there are people out there that worry so much because of their own feelings, forgetting that they might not be shared by others. But anyway, go and look at that poem. It's called Welcome to Holland by Emily Pearl Kinsley, and it's beautifully written, but I think it could also apply to other unexpected turns in life where you end up in Holland rather than Italy. I'm very lucky. But going back just to my previous point about these buckets of stress and the things that you can be worrying about, often those things aren't within your control. Other times they are, but there feels like there's lots of little things. Those things alone can have an impact on our stress hormones, and that can impact our sleep, our appetite, and our energy. It's basically our nervous system just doing its thing. Actually, I'm feeling pretty good. My husband's been ill all week and there is a lot going on, but actually I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like I've got a tiny bit of a cold, but touch wood, I'm coming off lightly, doing pretty well. And that is something else that I wanted to chat to you about today, because often women will say to me that their training is feeling particularly hard. So not only are they feeling a bit stressed, training is feeling a bit hard. I mentioned how your feeling can have an impact on your mood, your energy, your training as well. And when we're feeling like this, because our cognitive function is feeling a bit lower, when we then go and we try running and we go to the gym and we notice our performance has dropped, it's very easy for us to go, I've lost fitness. I'm so unfit now, because it's classic, isn't it? We want to beat ourselves up, but you don't need to. There is a big, big link to our physical performance and our mental capacity. And I noticed this as an instant thing recently. So we'd been really busy over Christmas, New Year, and then we had one weekend away I think it was the 9th of January. And when we came back from that trip away, I'd had a period of time where I felt like running was a bit harder. I assumed I'd lost a little bit of fitness. And I remember getting home and thinking, oh, I feel like a load's been lifted. because I haven't got anything booked in for the next few weeks. I'm feeling really good about that, which is why I link back to what I said previously, why I'm probably feeling good, because I am feeling mentally calmer because there's less other things for me to focus on. But the interesting thing was that my running appeared to improve overnight. My physical fitness just increased. What are the chances of that? But obviously my physical fitness didn't massively increase overnight. And I hadn't lost a load of physical fitness over the Christmas period. You see, it's feeling mentally lighter can change our perceived effort, and being more stressed can impair our recovery and our adaptation to training. And what I mean by perceived exertion is it might be that you're in the gym and you're lifting weights and everything feels heavy and you feel weak, but really your mind is just feeling full. And then another day you're in the gym and you're feeling good, mood's up, hormones are doing their thing in a good way, and you feel like you can lift more. And the same applies for when you're doing those more cardio things. It might be that some days you feel like every stride is an effort, and then suddenly you feel like you could run forever. And I have often used in the past a little gauge to help me with this, because I find that my balance is something that is impacted when my brain is fuller. And doing a single leg balance before I start training is quite a good way of clearing my mind. Now, I would do this with my eyes closed, but you can start with whatever you feel is easier. But in order to balance, we have to really focus. So you have to change your breathing, you have to focus, and then you can find that you can balance more. When we're all over the place, our balance is impacted. Our grip strength can be impacted. So doing something that helps you have that reset is quite a good idea. And some breathing exercises can really help with that. But really, what I'm trying to say is you're not losing fitness if you're feeling a little bit mentally loaded at the moment. It's likely that it's just your perceived level of exertion has changed and that your recovery is feeling a little bit harder. And that's why I say everything feels easier when we feel calmer. It's why we put those habits in place that mean that we're going to feel a bit more in control going forward. Now, this actually leads me nicely on to a question I had from a member of our community, which I'm going to read out to you because I think it is something that many people will resonate with. And it can get very confusing. She said, I still keep hearing that cardio should be either HIIT and sprinting or lower intensity like walking, and that something like jogging stresses the body and is bad, so should be avoided. I don't listen to myths, but it would be great if you could give me a sensible opinion on this. And I am so pleased that she asked this question, because there is a lot of noise out there around cardio. And it actually does link nicely to what we've just spoken about with stress and cognitive load, because when our nervous system is already on that high alert, whether that's from poor sleep or high mental load, emotional stress, or just feeling like life is pretty full on, it is so easy for exercise to feel like just another stressor rather than something that is supporting us. It can even be the pressure we put on ourselves, when we're saying, oh, I need to get out and do that run. I know I used to feel like this when I would be following a training plan and it would be on set days. I wasn't taking into consideration how I actually felt overall. Exercise can so very easily start to feel like another stressor rather than something that supports us. And although it's a good thing to exercise, exercise is a stressor. And this isn't bad, but it is a thing. And it's worth remembering, because if our overall stress is high, then recovery can take longer. So something that can feel fine at other times can feel harder when we're feeling a bit more stressed, as we've mentioned earlier. But it's often where people start to think that this type of cardio must be bad for me. But actually, most of the time, it's not that jogging or moderate cardio is harmful. It's that the load that you're experiencing all over it is too high, so recovery is not good enough. Cardio isn't just one thing. It's simply movement that challenges your heart and your lungs. And that can happen in so many different ways and at different intensities too. Like here we're talking walking, jogging, cycling, dancing, walking up hills, intervals, sprinting, swimming. They all sit somewhere on that spectrum. There isn't a sharp line where one movement suddenly becomes good, and on the other side is something that's bad. And one of the biggest myths I hear is that jogging is stressful for the body and should be avoided. And this just isn't supported by the research, because when we look at big studies on this, even small amounts or modest amounts of jogging, say around 50 minutes per week at a comfortable pace, so maybe able to talk whilst you're doing it, are associated with lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of early death compared to doing no running at all. So jogging, when we do it sensibly, is definitely not dangerous. It's actually quite protective. But where people tend to struggle is not with jogging itself, but stacking high intensity training on top of high life stress when they're not fueling enough or not recovering well. And that becomes a nervous system issue, not a jogging issue. HIIT and sprint style training absolutely have benefits. They can be very time efficient, they can improve fitness, and there's things to show that high impact weight bearing exercise along with strength training can help preserve and improve bone density too. But that doesn't mean it has to be a HIIT. Any type of high impact weight bearing exercise can count here, and HIIT and sprinting aren't superior for everyone, and they aren't something that you absolutely need to do all the time. So when researchers compare the higher intensity cardio with more moderate intensity cardio, both are shown to improve our health markers. And fat loss outcomes are often very similar when the total amount of work is comparable. So this idea that you should only ever walk or you should only ever sprint and nothing in between really, really doesn't add up. And I often think that another reason that we get confused with this comes from the language we see on cardio machines and on our watches. We see things like fat burning zones, aerobic zones, and anaerobic zones. And it can make it sound like there's one correct place that you're meant to be. If you've got a fat loss goal, you need to stay in the fat loss burning zone or the fat burning zone. And those zones are based on your heart rate and describe which fuel source your body is going to be using more of in that exact moment. So at lower intensities, your body uses a higher proportion of fat. At higher intensities, it uses a higher proportion of carbohydrates. And that's where the term fat burning zone comes from. But burning a higher percentage of fat during the activity does not automatically mean you're going to lose more body fat overall. Fat loss comes from your overall energy balance over time, not from chasing a specific number on a screen. Higher intensity work tends to burn more total energy in less time, and lower and moderate intensity work is easier to recover from and easier to repeat when life is busy. Both have value. The aerobic zone, which is often where we see jogging coming in, is incredibly important. That's where it's going to support our heart health, our endurance, our recovery, and even how well we tolerate harder training when we choose to do it. So if your nervous system is already under pressure, choosing movement that feels like it's going to have you feeling better rather than overwhelming is really supportive, and it has made such a difference to my training overall. But that doesn't mean that we avoid doing the higher intensity stuff forever. It just means matching the type of exercise to what we can manage right now. And this is where it always comes back to listening to your body, not just your watch or the training program. Your watch is going to give you data, but your body is going to give you the feedback. So if a type of cardio is leaving you feeling calmer, clearer, and you're recovering well afterwards, this is definitely worth paying attention to. You do not have to sprint to get huge benefits. You don't need to fear jogging, and you don't need to force yourself into one style of cardio because someone online said that it was a good idea. Like I've often said, one of the biggest things that has changed for me with my running, in particular my running, is that my main intention is to come back feeling better than I did when I headed out. And I say this again and again. And part of that is learning to adapt as needed. So my runs will be considered in the jogging zone, I guess. And part of this started because there was a time where I thought, oh goodness, I can't run anymore. And it was because I wasn't listening to my body. And I was going out and trying to run, but I was trying to run how I used to run when I wasn't quite fit enough at this present time. And my recovery in between was shocking. It wasn't good at all. And I was constantly feeling drained. So what I actually did to make myself enjoy it a little bit more is start where I was. And I realized I could just do this mile loop. I spoke about this on a recent podcast. I don't always track my runs on my watch. I'll wear my watch. I want to track my steps, but I don't do that because I want to be able to listen to my body and not get carried away with what it says on here. And my running improved because of this, because of the fact that I was able to be more consistent, because I was doing it in a way where recovery felt easier in between. And I know that you'll hear again and again about sprint training and all sorts of things. And yes, there are benefits to all of these things. But the most optimal thing that you can do is what you can do consistently. And that will be changing a little bit depending on how you're feeling. The other thing I thought I would note here is if you're somebody that does like to do cardio, like I do, then it might impact how you do your gym sessions as well. So I'll often program in for people who aren't runners and perhaps don't get cardio outside of the gym, just a short bit of more intense cardio at the end of their workout. And I always used to do this without fail. But I noticed that even that short bit of intense exercise was impacting my running, nothing else, just my running. And now I've thought about it and I was like, I do plenty of cardio outside of the gym. I can make my gym sessions more specific strength sessions. And that's what I've done too. So my strength sessions are for strength and my running is for my cardio. And I also feel like I can clear my head. So I hope that answers your question, because it's a bit of a vague way of answering it, because I've basically said all types of exercise have their place, but it's how you're able to recover. And if you're in a calorie deficit and you're trying to go too low in calories, that is also going to impact things, because the energy you have isn't going to be enough to be able to perform well. And then you get into the danger levels of things like RED-S, relative energy deficiency in sport. But regardless, all exercise is good exercise if you're able to recover properly from it. And finally, another point I really wanted to touch on is something that came up in a couple of podcasts. And actually, I've had a message from a lovely, lovely member today. And I thought, right, I'm glad I'm going to cover this, because she said in your podcast with Andy, you seemed upset about the fact that there's this obligation for PTs to show their stomach, wear a bikini. I think it was probably more defensive. So I thought I will explain myself a little bit more, because after my podcast with lovely Lisa a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about why it is I do hide myself. And I say hide myself. You will find pictures of me on Instagram in a bikini and in a sports bra and shorts. But on the whole, I feel more comfortable wearing a vest top. I show my legs, I show my arms, shoulders, whatever, but I normally wear a vest top. And I mentioned to Lisa on a WhatsApp conversation that this was probably because I've got a short torso and I don't have much midriff to show. And then somebody else said to me, oh, you could just roll down your shorts or wear lower waist ones. And then I realized what the true issue is. And it's the fact that I've had a C-section. And I don't know if any of the other people out there that have had a C-section can relate to this. But as you go closer down towards my C-section scar, I've got looser skin. I gained a fair bit of weight. I had a few stretch marks, nothing terrible. And I've got this little ledge, and it really is just like this looser skin and then a little ledge, and then it's like it's tightened behind and it's there, whatever, all the time. But if I'm wearing something that's a little bit higher waisted, so it's not sitting on that bikini line, then, and I'm talking bikinis here, sometimes it cuts in a little bit more and you can see my scar either side. And then if I wear things lower, it sits kind of where that ledge is. And I know that I shouldn't be ashamed of this. And I guess I'm really torn, because part of me wants to be that person that shows you my C-section scar decently. It is, lower, and shows you how you can be proud of it and so on. And there's another part of me that just likes to keep it hidden. And maybe I will share a picture of it at some point. But the skin changes as we go lower. And so there's this like safety line, I guess, for me. And trying to find clothes that sit in that safety line is sometimes a challenge. And I wanted to be honest about that, because I do think it was a defensive thing. But I also think that a lot of women, and this is what I've been thinking about a little bit more, a lot of women will feel that they should be proud of this area. And one of the things that will get said to me quite a lot is, but look at what it brought you. I'm not ashamed of my C-section scar. I'm very comfortable with it day to day, but I think you can be both comfortable and uncomfortable. I think you can be proud of what it gave you and still not be fully at peace with it in everyday life. Also, it's quite a low area, so flaunt it and show it off in everyday life is maybe not something that would be allowed on Instagram. I might be getting reports for indecent content regardless. But I thought this isn't just a thing that applies to C-sections, is it? We're very good at filtering out those aspects of ourselves we don't like. When I put up a story about how I've got a short body and that's why, and again, it's partly the truth, but I think it is more that too low, C-section scar, bit of looser skin, too high, no midriff. So, we have these areas, but I got messages from women going, oh, I'm the opposite. I've got a long torso and short legs. I don't like my legs, blah, blah. Several women actually said this. And I thought, we will just wear leggings if we don't like our legs. If we don't like our arms, women will naturally wear longer tops. You don't need to, but we do. And I guess there's the understanding that most people will hide from the world the bits they feel a little bit insecure about. In fact, I was talking to one of my best friends who was asking for advice on leggings for running. I said to her, why don't you wear shorts if you're going to be running in the gym if you don't like the feel of the pockets on the side? And she said, it's interesting you say that, because the thought of running in shorts and getting my legs out running just fills me with horror. And she is somebody that you would not think would have any issues with her body at all, but we just don't know what people are carrying. And we've got women that are covering up varicose veins, cellulite, stretch marks, which might be from growth spurts, puberty, weight changes, or pregnancy, changes in our boobs, whether there's changes in the volume, the fullness, whatever it is, and people will start changing what they wear and how they adapt to that. And perhaps more of us do need to go out there and show the world that this is normal. And this is where I'm torn, because there is this feeling of wanting to support those and say it's okay, because honestly, if anyone else was getting out parts of their body that they weren't comfortable with, if somebody was wearing shorts and they had a bit of cellulite, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. I wouldn't even notice it because it's so normal. And yet we cover ourselves up and then we aren't exposed to it in everyday life. And it's an issue, isn't it? It's an issue that I think I'll keep thinking about and keep churning it around in my head. And just one thing to touch on with a C-section scar, and I think this comes up with how we see other women on the internet as well. There is no correct way, just in case you have got a C-section scar, for it to heal. You might have women who, I got sent a picture of someone with a C-section scar the other day who was absolutely chiseled, no skin looseness at all, and then just a scar. And then you get other people, I think Lisa on her Instagram the other day called it a mother's apron, which I'm not sure I love that term, but you get other women who have quite a lot of loose skin that will hang over. Changes in weight can make a difference, but most of the time what we're experiencing, where your muscles have recovered, you're feeling pretty strong, and then as you get closer towards it, it gets softer, then you get your scar and it's tucked in, and it's almost like your pubic bone sits like further back from that. That's normally a bit of the fact that your skin hasn't fully recovered. When you are having a C-section, they pull the muscles apart and they cut through fascia, which is the supportive kind of membrane around the muscles and the skin as well. And muscles do kind of recover and recoil more quickly than our skin and fascia. And this is what can change how we recover from it. And it's easy to try and blame yourself for how your C-section healed, but you get women who gained a lot of weight in pregnancy that have very little loose skin, and you get women that gained very little weight in pregnancy and have a lot of loose skin. And it can come down to genetics, where your incision is, your age at the time that you were pregnant, and so many other things. So if your scar is there and you're feeling a bit self-conscious about it, just know that it's very normal, and perhaps more of us do need to, without being indecent, show our scars. But the other thing that's worth remembering with body image, and I see this all the time with my members, with myself as well, is that research shows us that our confidence is dependent on context. It changes with stress, energy, and our emotional load. So all of the things we've talked about earlier can impact how we feel. So there might be days where I'm like, I'm going to show them my C-section scar. And there might be other days where I'm like, I'm not sure that I can deal with showing them that right now. And that is okay too. Anyway, I hope that from this episode, if anything, you have taken away the fact that not all weeks are going to look the same. January can be a bit challenging, but we can normally just look at doing those small things that we know lift our mood. If in doubt, ask yourself, what will make it more enjoyable? Now, I hope you've enjoyed this slightly different format to the podcast this week. And if anything, I hope that you've been able to take from it that not every week is going to be the same. Sometimes we do need to adapt and adjust. If in doubt, ask yourself, how can I make this more enjoyable? And if you're struggling with that mental load at the moment, then know that it can impact other areas of life too. And that is okay. It's understandable. It might be that you just need to reduce the cognitive load in whatever way you can. And as we go into February, it's not necessarily about adding another goal and trying to go with another challenge. Think about those habits that you'd love to be doing long term that you want to keep, and ask yourself, what is one small thing that I can do that will help me move on to doing that? Inside the No Crap Cake method in February, we're going to be continuing with those ripple effect habits. And although I'm saying to members they can choose something for the morning and evening that suits them, I'm still going to be going live Monday to Friday in the morning with a PJ workout, because I know the impact that movement can have on our lives. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, do make sure that you're following or that you've subscribed so you don't miss out on the next one. And if you want some support putting this into practice, then come and join us inside the No Crap Cake method. This is where we focus on building strength, confidence, and consistency in a way that feels good and that fits with your life. All the links to this will be in the show notes. But until next time, goodbye.